The crack in my foundation cost $11,000 to fix. The tree that caused it cost $12 at a nursery. I have been gardening the same property for over 40 years. I have planted hundreds of trees. I have also removed dozens of them, some at significant cost, some after watching them do damage I could not undo. This video exists because I wish someone had told me what I am about to tell you before I made these mistakes. Not after. There is a specific category of tree that gets sold at every garden center in America without a single warning label. Trees that look manageable. Trees that look ornamental. Trees that nursery staff call fast-growing or low maintenance or great for privacy. What they do not say, what no one says until it is too late, is that the root system on many of these trees will reach your foundation, your sewer lines, your water pipes, and your driveway long before the tree looks large enough to cause that kind of damage. The Arbor Day Foundation puts minimum planting distances for large trees at 30 to 50 feet from any structure. Most homeowners plant at 10. That difference is what paid for my contractor's vacation. I am going to walk you through 11 trees I either planted myself or watched neighbors plant, and regret. Some of these are trees you probably already have. If that is the case, stay with me, because I will also tell you what to do about it. But the tree at number 11, the one most people plant on purpose, the one sold at every garden center as romantic and graceful, that one destroyed a neighbor's sewer line at 42 feet. I watched it happen. That story is at the end of this video, and you need to hear it before you make the same call. Before we get into the list, I want to ask you something. Drop your USDA hardiness zone in the comments below. Several of these trees are zone-specific in their worst behavior, and I want to know which ones are relevant to where you are growing. Also, if you have already planted one of the trees on this list, tell me which one. You are not alone. I have gotten more messages about foundation damage from trees than almost any other topic in 40 years of gardening, and most of the people writing to me thought they were doing everything right. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of information. No trends, no aesthetics, real plant knowledge with real consequences attached. Before I go through the list, I want to establish how I am defining damage near a house. I am not just talking about trees that crack a foundation directly, though several on this list will do exactly that. I am also talking about trees whose roots invade sewer and water lines, trees that heave driveways and sidewalks, trees that destroy retaining walls, and trees whose root systems are so aggressive they will undermine any structure within their reach over a period of 10 to 30 years. The USDA Forest Service is explicit on this point. The majority of root damage from trees is not visible above ground until significant structural harm has already occurred below. You will not see the problem coming. You will see the invoice. I am also defining near in a way that might surprise you. Several trees on this list have root systems that extend 2 to 3 times the spread of the canopy. For a mature tree, that means roots operating 40, 60, even 80 feet from the trunk. You can plant a tree that appears to be a safe distance from your house and still experience structural damage because of it. That is what I did. Multiple times. The trees on this list are organized roughly from most commonly planted to most commonly regretted. The worst offender, in my experiences and in the literature from Cornell Cooperative Extension, is at the end. Number 1. Silver Maple, Acer saccharinum. USDA zones 3 through 9 full sun. Grows 40 to 60 feet tall, 30 to 50 feet wide at maturity. I planted 2 silver maples in 1987 because a neighbor had one, and it looked beautiful in autumn. Fast-growing, shade-producing, drought-tolerant. That was the sales pitch, and all of it was true. What was also true is that silver maple has one of the most aggressive, surface-seeking root systems of any deciduous tree in North America. The roots of Acer saccharinum are notorious in arborist literature. They grow fast, they grow shallow, often within the top 6 to 18 inches of soil, and they actively seek water sources. Sewer lines, irrigation pipes, foundation seams where moisture collects, silver maple roots will find all of them. My 2 trees heaved the corner of my driveway within 8 years. By year 12, I had roots lifting sections of my front walkway. By year 18, a plumber discovered feeder roots from the larger tree had infiltrated a section of clay sewer pipe 60 feet from the trunk. The problem with silver maple is that it is so commonly planted, and it looks so unremarkable, that homeowners underestimate it consistently. The Arbor Day Foundation rates it as one of the top problematic trees for residential properties, specifically because of root behavior and structural encroachment. If you have silver maples planted within 40 feet of any structure, hard surface, or utility line, I would strongly recommend a professional assessment. Not because removal is always the answer, but because root barriers installed early can redirect growth before damage occurs. The safe planting distance for silver maple is a minimum of 35 feet from any structure. Most people plant it at 15. Do not make that mistake. Number 2. Eastern Cottonwood, Populous deltoids. USDA zones 2 through 9, full sun, mature height 70 to 100 feet. Root spread easily 100 feet or more from the trunk. I have never planted a cottonwood. I have watched 3 neighbors plant cottonwoods, and I have watched 3 neighbors regret it. Eastern cottonwood is the fastest growing native tree in North America. That is its appeal. People want shade quickly, and cottonwood delivers shade quickly. What it also delivers is a root system that is proportional to that growth rate, meaning it expands at a pace that most homeowners have no framework to anticipate. Cottonwood roots are not subtle. They will surface, they will spread, they will find every available moisture source in the surrounding landscape. One neighbor of mine planted a single cottonwood 40 feet from his home, believing that distance was more than adequate. Within 14 years, roots had reached the foundation perimeter. A structural engineer told him the roots had not yet caused visible cracking, but that continued growth would. He paid approximately $4,000 for root removal and barrier installation. The other issue with cottonwood is the cotton, the white cottony seeds that shed in late spring and early summer. This is an aesthetic problem that becomes a practical problem because it clogs gutters, accumulates against foundations, and retains moisture. In combination with an aggressive root system, this is a tree that creates maintenance problems on multiple fronts simultaneously. Plant cottonwood in open land. Plant it in riparian areas where it belongs ecologically. Do not plant it within 80 feet of your house. That distance is not an exaggeration. The root system on a mature eastern cottonwood is one of the largest of any deciduous tree in temperate North America. Number 3. Norway maple, Acer platanoides, USDA zones 4 through 7. Full sun to partial shade. 40 to 50 feet tall at maturity. Norway maple was one of the most popular street trees planted in American cities through the 1970s and 1980s. It is shade-tolerant, pollution-tolerant, and adapts to difficult urban soils. Those qualities made it attractive to municipalities and homeowners alike. They also masked a problem that became apparent over time. Acer platanoides produces a dense, fibrous root mat that sits primarily in the upper 12 inches of soil. This mat is aggressive enough to displace other plants, buckle pavement, and, if planted too close to a structure, exert pressure on foundation walls over decades. The University of Minnesota Extension, which has studied Norway maple extensively in upper Midwest urban environments, has noted its root behavior as a significant infrastructure concern in residential settings. It is also invasive in many parts of the northeastern United States. It outcompetes native maples, particularly sugar maple, and spreads readily from seed. Several states have placed it on invasive species watch lists. If you are in zones 4 through 6 and have Norway maple near your home, you may be dealing with both a structural threat and an ecological one. The dense canopy of Norway maple also presents a secondary problem. It creates deep shade and allelopathic soil conditions that prevent other plants from growing beneath it. So you end up with a tree that damages your foundation, spreads invasively, and turns the ground beneath it into dead space. Minimum safe distance, 35 to 40 feet from any structure, utility line, or hard surface. Number 4. Lombardy Poplar, Populus nigra italica, USDA zones 3 through 9, full sun. Grows 60 to 90 feet tall with a narrow columnar form. Lombardy poplar is the tree people plant for privacy. That columnar silhouette looks dramatic along a property line. It grows fast, 3 to 5 feet per year in good conditions, and it creates a visual screen quickly. I understand the appeal. I planted a row of 5 along my back fence line in the mid-1990s. What I did not understand at the time is that Lombardy poplar roots are shallow and extremely wide-spreading. That narrow crown does not mean a narrow root system. Beneath the surface, the roots of Populus nigra spread laterally in every direction, seeking moisture, following pipe seams, and traveling towards structures. The narrow canopy is purely above ground. Below ground, this tree behaves like any other fast-growing poplar, aggressively. My 5 Lombardy poplars reached the sewer lateral from the house to the street within 11 years. A plumber discovered hair-thin feeder roots, threading through a joint in the terracotta pipe during a routine inspection. Root infiltration in sewer lines is one of the leading causes of residential drain backups in the United States, according to USDA Forest Service urban forestry data. Lombardy poplar also has a short lifespan by tree standards, 20 to 30 years, and is susceptible to canker disease that can cause sudden dieback. So you invest years managing root encroachment, and then the tree declines before it would naturally age out. Safe planting distance, 50 feet minimum from any sewer, water, or utility line. Do not plant it along a fence line adjacent to underground infrastructure. Number 5. Sweet gum, Liquid Ambar styrosifla, USDA zones 5 through 9, full sun, 60 to 75 feet tall at maturity with a 30 to 50 foot spread. Sweet gum gets onto this list for 2 reasons. The first is the root system. Surface aggressive, wide-spreading, capable of heaving walkways and driveways and exerting pressure on foundations. The second reason is something almost no nursery staff mentions, the gumballs. Liquidambar styraciflua produces spiny seed pods, the gumballs, in quantities that range from nuisance to hazard depending on the tree's age and location. A mature sweet gum near a walkway or entry produces an ankle-turning, hard-to-clean mess that runs from late fall through early winter. I have seen older homeowners fall on gumballs on their own property. I have seen dogs cut their paws on them. But back to the structural issue. Sweet gum's root system is less notorious than silver maple or cottonwood, which is part of why it ends up closer to houses than it should. People know to give willow space. They do not always give sweet gum space. And when the root system matures, it behaves similarly to other large canopy trees. Surface-seeking, structure-threatening, difficult to redirect. The Arbor Day Foundation recommends a minimum planting distance of 20 feet from paved surfaces for sweet gum and further from any structure. In practice, I would say 40 feet minimum from a foundation wall, given what I have seen in mature specimens. If you want the fall color that makes sweet gum attractive, there are cultivars bred to produce fewer or no seed pods. Rotundiloba is the most commonly available. That solves the gumball problem. It does not solve the root problem. Safe distance still applies. We are halfway through the list. The trees we have covered so far are the ones I see most frequently planted too close to homes in zones 3 through 9. Every single one of them was planted by someone who thought they were making a reasonable choice. Every single one of them caused a problem that could have been avoided with better information. Before we continue, if this video is useful to you, a like helps other homeowners find it before they make these same mistakes. That is the reason I make this content. Drop your zone in the comments. I want to know where you are and what trees are common in your area. That shapes the next videos I put out and the information in them. Number 6 is coming up, and it is one that surprises people because it is a native species with a respected reputation. The problem is where people plant it. Number 6, American elm. Ulmus americana. USDA zones 2 through 9, full sun, 60 to 80 feet tall at maturity, with a vase-shaped canopy that can spread 60 to 120 feet wide. American elm is a magnificent tree, I want to be clear about that. It is a significant part of the American landscape, and its near elimination by Dutch elm disease in the 20th century was a genuine ecological loss. Disease-resistant cultivars are now available. Princeton, Valley Forge, New Harmony, and they are worth planting, just not near your house. The root system of mature American elm is wide-spreading and aggressive. The canopy tells you something. A tree with a 60 to 100-foot canopy spread has a root system that follows at least that diameter and often exceeds it. The Arbor Day Foundation recommends planting large shade trees, American elm included, a minimum of 20 to 30 feet from structures. I would put that number higher for elm, especially for older or larger than average specimens. What makes elm particularly relevant to this conversation is drainage. Elm roots actively follow drainage patterns and moisture gradients. If you have a foundation that collects moisture, any slight grading issue, any crack in a basement wall that allows dampness, elm roots will find it. The roots do not create the initial crack, but once moisture is present, they will exploit any existing weakness. I have seen American elm roots travel beneath concrete patios and reach foundation walls on the opposite side. Distance matters enormously with this tree. If you are planting disease-resistant elm cultivars, and they are worth planting, do it in your yard's open space, not adjacent to the house. Number 7, white mulberry, Morus alba. USDA zones 4 through 8, full sun, 30 to 50 feet tall, similar spread. White mulberry was brought to North America from China in the 1600s as part of an attempt to establish a domestic silk industry. The silk industry failed. The mulberry stayed. It is now naturalized across most of the eastern and central United States and is considered invasive in many regions. I planted a white mulberry once, in the late 1980s, because I liked the fruit and thought it would attract birds. Both of those things were true. What was also true is that Morus alba seeds prolifically, spreads through root suckers, and has a root system that heaves pavement and infiltrates pipes with the same casual ease as silver maple. White mulberry roots are known to crack sidewalks, push up pavement, and invade sewer lines. The fruit drops in quantities that stain concrete, attract insects, and create a cleanup burden for weeks. The birds the fruit attracts then distribute seeds throughout your property and your neighbor's properties, which is how this tree has become so widespread. There is also a less discussed issue with white mulberry. It cross-pollinates with native red mulberry, Morus rubra, threatening the genetic integrity of a species that is already in decline across much of its range. Planting white mulberry in the eastern United States is not simply a property decision. It has ecological consequences. Minimum safe planting distance, 30 feet from any structure, hard surface, or utility line. Better option, do not plant it at all if you are in the eastern half of the country. Native red mulberry planted at appropriate distance is a far better choice for wildlife value. Number 8. Black locust, Robinia pseudoacacia, USDA zones 3 through 8, full sun, 30 to 50 feet tall, highly variable spread. Black locust has a devoted following, and I understand why. It is a nitrogen-fixing native species. It produces intensely fragrant white flower clusters in late spring, and it is one of the hardest, most rot-resistant woods in North America. Fence posts made from black locust outlast treated lumber. That is a legitimate and remarkable quality. The problem is what it does in the ground. Black locust spreads through root suckers, lateral roots that send up new shoots far from the original trunk. A single tree planted 10 years ago can produce a colony of shoots across a 30-foot radius. Those suckers are difficult to eliminate. Cutting them stimulates more growth. Herbicide applications require precision and repetition. Cornell Cooperative Extension has documented black locust spreading aggressively from single plantings in residential settings, colonizing garden beds, appearing in lawns, and pushing through fence lines. The root suckering behavior is the primary concern near a house. Suckers will emerge adjacent to foundation walls, under porches, through cracks in patios. The root network that enables this spread is wide, aggressive, and difficult to interrupt once established. If you want black locust for its ecological or wood qualities, plant it in an open field or along a property boundary far from any structure. It is a fine tree in the right context. Near your house, it is a management problem that compounds every year. Number 9. Tree of Heaven, Ailanthus altissima, USDA zones 4 through 8, full sun, 60 to 80 feet tall at maturity. Tree of Heaven is the only tree on this list that most experienced gardeners already know to avoid. It appears here because homeowners occasionally plant it intentionally, mistaking it for a desirable ornamental when small, and because it appears uninvited on properties with enough frequency that it warrants discussion. Ailanthus altissima is one of the most aggressively invasive trees in North America. It was introduced from China in the late 1700s, and it has spread to all 48 contiguous states. It grows in sidewalk cracks, in foundation seams, in gutters, in drain pipes. It is not a tree you manage, it is a tree you fight. The root system of Tree of Heaven is not just aggressive, it is chemically allelopathic, meaning it releases compounds that suppress the growth of surrounding vegetation. The USDA Invasive Plant Atlas lists it as among the most problematic woody invasives in urban and suburban environments in the United States. If Tree of Heaven has appeared on your property, remove it immediately and treat the stump with an appropriate herbicide to prevent regrowth from the root system. If left to mature, removal becomes significantly more difficult, and the surrounding root network will have already begun affecting whatever infrastructure is nearby. I have seen Ailanthus altissima crack concrete retaining walls. I have seen it grow through the floor of an abandoned garage. It does not require invitation to cause damage. If it is on your property, act before it matures. Number 10. Box Elder Acer negundo, USDA zones 2 through 9, full sun to partial shade, 35 to 60 feet tall at maturity. Box Elder is the tree on this list that gets the least attention, which is part of why it earns a spot here. It is a native maple, a scrappy, fast-growing, adaptable species that colonizes disturbed ground across most of North America. It is not a tree most people plant intentionally. It is a tree that plants itself, and that is precisely the issue. Box elder volunteers along fence lines, at the base of foundation walls, in garden beds, and gutters. A seed dropped by a bird or carried on the wind germinates in a crack and grows quickly before anyone realizes what it is. By the time it looks like a tree, the root system is already established. Acer negundo root systems are aggressive and moisture-seeking, consistent with the genus. They will infiltrate drainage systems, sewer laterals, and foundation seams given adequate time and proximity. The tree's prolific seeding habit and its tendency to appear in exactly the locations where you do not want a tree growing means it causes foundation and infrastructure problems not through intentional planting but through neglect. My recommendation is to pull box elder seedlings immediately whenever they appear near a structure. They are easy to identify. The compound leaves distinguish them from other maples, and easy to remove when small. Do not wait. A box elder that reaches 2 inches in trunk diameter has a root system that is already deep enough to require tools to remove. At 4 inches, you need professional help. Number 11. The one I have been building toward, Weeping Willow, Salix babylonica, USDA zones 6 through 8, full sun, 30 to 50 feet tall at maturity, 40 to 50 feet wide, and a root system that the Arbor Day Foundation describes as capable of extending 2 to 3 times the spread of the canopy in search of water. On a mature weeping willow, that means roots actively foraging 100 feet or more from the trunk. I want to tell you about my neighbor. He planted a weeping willow in 1998 at the edge of his back lawn, approximately 60 feet from his house and roughly 45 feet from the property line shared with the house behind him. It was a thoughtful distance by most normal standards. He had done some research. He knew willows liked water. He kept it away from the pond feature in his garden. He thought 60 feet from the house was more than adequate. By 2009, a drain backup in the house behind him, the neighbor on the far side of the property line, traced back to his willow. Root infiltration in a PVC sewer lateral 42 feet from the trunk across a property line he did not own. The roots had crossed his entire yard, crossed the property line, and threaded into a pipe in someone else's drainage system. He paid for the repair. He did not have to legally, but he did. And then he paid to have the willow professionally removed, which for a tree of that size cost more than the repair had. That is the story. But let me give you the full picture of why weeping willow belongs at number 11 on this list, at the very top of the regret ranking, beyond one neighbor's story. Salix babylonica is genetically programmed to find water. This is not a metaphor. The root system of the weeping willow responds to moisture gradients in the soil with directional growth that other trees do not exhibit to the same degree. Every pipe joint, every foundation crack that allows moisture to seep, every drainage tile, every irrigation line is a target. The USDA Forest Service urban forestry guidance is explicit. Weeping willow should not be planted within 50 feet of any underground utility, sewer line, water main, or drainage system. Many arborists put that number higher, at 75 feet, because root behavior in favorable conditions can exceed the averages the literature reports. And yet it is sold at every garden center in America. It is described as romantic, it is photographed next to ponds and recommended for water features in residential landscaping books. The implication in that framing is that you manage the water-seeking behavior by giving the tree a pond to drink from. What actually happens is that the tree drinks from the pond and the sewer line and the irrigation system simultaneously. There is no shortage of aesthetically beautiful trees that do not search for and destroy your underground infrastructure. Weeping willow is not the only option for graceful form, for screening, for movement in a landscape. Japanese maples, thornless honey locust, white fringe tree, native serviceberry cultivars, all of these provide beauty at a scale appropriate to a residential lot without the infrastructure risk. If you already have a weeping willow planted close to your house, get a camera inspection of your sewer lateral done. Ask a plumber to look specifically at the stretch of pipe closest to the tree. If the tree is young, under 10 years and under 4 inches in trunk diameter, professional root pruning and barrier installation can redirect future growth. If the tree is mature, the conversation shifts to whether the root system has already done damage and whether removal is the right long-term decision. I am not saying remove every weeping willow in every situation. I am saying that of all the trees on this list, this is the one most likely to cause significant structural or infrastructure damage because of how deliberately and specifically its root system targets water sources, including the ones running under your foundation. The crack in my